Hello everybody, my name is Andy Shepherd. I'm the National Sales Manager for Triangle Information Management. I've decided to put together a short series of webinars exploring the tool that IBM currently has that's freely available in the market called IBM Insight. And this is a technology which IBM has released really to help those people that are interested in self-service, that maybe want to do some desktop analytics, who maybe not be ready quite yet to step into the enterprise in terms of business reporting and analytics. And I thought that it might be useful for me to really just step people through the process really of bringing data into Insight, manipulating that data, and then essentially creating a dashboard. So that should only take me about 20 to 25 minutes. And my experience of Cognos Insight is it's a very powerful tool once you understand how it works and how exactly to use the tool to great effect. So without further ado then, what I'm going to do, as I say, is the first thing I'm going to do is just share with you, some typical data. And the data that I'll be working with today is based on some historical sales data over a 2.5 year period, over 2012, 2013, and some of 2014. And I thought it would be interesting to particularly focus this around sales and around sales management. Clearly it's an area that I'm in, and again how we can use the Insight technology to analyze data. So what I've got is I've got a spreadsheet here which is about 350,000 lines long. And you can see here that there's really just a whole bunch of data that you would normally expect to see as a sales manager, including invoices and costs and values and so on and so forth. And it is worth noting that at the very top here we've got all the headers as well that we need for this particular set of data. So that's the data I'm going to be working with, so I'm going to go ahead and just close that, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up the Insight tool and just talk a little bit around what you're likely to see when you bring up the Insight tool. So we'll just wait for that to load up, and here it is. So when you first download Insight, this is exactly what you're presented with, and there's a lot of videos on the web courtesy of IBM, but I tend to find that they talk a little bit around the benefit to the business, not actually how you use the tool itself, and they tend to run through it very quickly. So I thought I'd maybe just slow things down a little bit and try to explain to people in plain English how this works. So when you're presented with this particular screen here, this is kind of your starting place, and you'll see here that there are a bunch of themes that we can potentially go ahead and use. I'm not going to be using those just yet, we will towards the end. But also there's a whole bunch of reports down the bottom here that I've used previously, which we can then simply quickly access again if we need to. So the first thing that we need to do is decide how we're going to bring some data in. And as you can see here, we've got a number of files that are available to us, and what Insight gives you the option to do is either drag and drop that data, or we've got a get data option right here where we can simply bring some stuff in. So I'm going to use the get data option. We just go import data, and there you can see it's going to give me a screen to point at to ask me where I want to look at. So the first thing it's going to ask is what's the import name. So I'm going to call this sales dashboard August 2014. It's also asking me what type of file it is, so it's box standard file, and then we just got a browse option here. So I'm going to go ahead and browse. Now what you'll notice here is that's the data there that I was showing. You can see it's by no means a small file, but I'm just going to click on that, click on open, and what Insight will do is immediately bring that into a format where I can see the data. So it is worth checking at this point, looking at the file data, whether and how the data is spaced out, whether it's using commas or not. And also it's asking me here whether I've got headers in the columns. In this particular example, I do. I've got the date here, the invoice, transaction, and customer. And you'll notice if I click no, then obviously that changes the screen there. So we're going to go ahead and click yes, and you can see it's just highlighted it there. So interestingly, also what it's done is it's gone ahead and it's made the decision for me, essentially, that these are all the dimensions that I want to look at, and these are all the measures here. And in this particular example, it's got it exactly right. But just for the purposes of the demo, it may be that today I'm not that interested in looking at the date. So I'm going to turn date off, and you can see the column highlights here to turn that off. I'm going to go ahead and say, well, I'm not really that interested in invoice number. I'm not interested in town. I'm not interested in postcode. Now, it may be that one of these dimensions is actually a measure, and it's really easy for me just to say, well, actually, I know that product is a measure, and I just click on this here, and you can see there it's just very quickly turned it into a measure. Now, it's actually not, so we're just going to head and click that off. And again, it gives me a nice preview of the data here to make sure that it totally understands exactly what I want to have imported in. So I'm happy with that, so I'm going to click on import, and then what essentially Insight does here is it builds a cube, which may be familiar terminology to many of you. But cube technology is an in-memory technology, which is what gives TM1 the ability to do rapid and quick calculations, as well as the opportunity for you to manipulate the data and have a look at different ways that the data is working. So this isn't something that's new. I mean, there are other vendors out there that are touting this as the the best technology in the world because of that it's overlapping in memory. But again, IBM has something that's exactly the same. Okay, so it's now gone and bought or built that cube essentially. So we've essentially got 350,000 lines built into this cube. Now, what Insight will do every time you build a cube is it will essentially splash you onto this page here. And it's pretty meaningless. It's just taken all of your measures, and it's taken the very first column, and it's literally just said, well, this is what we're looking at. Now, that's not much good to many people. So what we want to be able to do is to start to interrogate the data, and there's a couple of ways we can do that. At the top here, you can see that I've got various options of different dimensions that I can drag and drop. The other way to do that is on the right hand here. We've got all of the dimensions here and all of the measures, and again, this is all just drag and drop, so we can just simply pull stuff over. Now I'm going to hide that because I don't need to see it twice, and at this stage here I can now start asking which particular questions that I'm looking to ask. So assuming I'm the sales manager, one of the things that I'm interested in is how have my sales team done between 2012 and 2013? Who were the people that advanced and who were the people that didn't have such a great time of it? And then, do we need to look at some early indicators through 2014 to see if these people are likely to achieve what we set out for them to achieve? So in order for me to do that, I need to bring in what it is exactly that I'm looking to understand. So in this particular instance, what I'm looking to look at is at the salesman. Now, as I look at the headers here, I can see that some of these aren't really very user-friendly. So, for example, if I look at this here, Manage Prod Group doesn't really tell me much. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click, and I'm going to rename that Major Product Group. Well, that's much more friendly and easier on the eye. And equally here with Salesman 2, I'm simply going to right click and rename that Salesman. And I could do that for all of these if I wanted, but really just for the purposes of the demo, you can see how easy it is for me to go ahead and change that. So I'm simply just going to pick up Salesman, and I'm going to drag it into the rows and just drop it there. And as you can see, immediately what Insight has gone and done is listed all the salesmen based on all of these particular measures here, which is count, volume, value, and costs. Now, I do notice that what we don't have here is everything in alphabetical order, which might make it a bit difficult. So I can go ahead and click on total of salesmen and then right click and then sort and then by label and then ascending. And what you'll notice is Insight has immediately gone away and put these into alphabetical order. So that's much easier for me to sift through and filter if I'm looking for particular people. Okay, so now I've got my sales people and I've got my various measures. What is it exactly that I'm after? Well, I'm not interested in count and I'm not interested in volume or costs. So in order for me to hide those columns, I need to click on each of the titles here. I need to push Control and click to select that, and Control and click to select cost, then right click, and it gives me the hide option here, and I just hide that detail. Okay, so now I'm starting to get something a little more interesting. So effectively what I've got here is over the 2.5 year period, the total that the sales team have managed to sell out. But I want to actually get a bit deeper into that, and I want to understand over specific periods. So the way that we do that is I need to bring in another dimension. In this case, it's period. So again, on the right hand side here, I've got period, and I can simply pick this up, and I can drag it over, and I can just plonk it right next to the other measure here. Okay, so now what I've got is my 2012 to 2013 comparison and my 2014. So I'm starting to get, again, a bit more information that I'm after. What I'm not necessarily interested in is the total for the period, nor am I interested in the 2014 period either. So what I want to go ahead and do is I want to hide the 2014 section because we've only got half a year of that, and I also want to hide the total for the period. So again, it's a right click and then hide option. Great. So you can see now what I've got is a 2012 to 2013 compare. So as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, what I want to do is compare the two, and I want to see over those two periods which were the salespeople that year on year had a good year and which hadn't necessarily had such a great time of it. So again, going back to my point around the fact that we've got some cube technology, it means we can do some really clever calculations. So again, by selecting both columns, and if I right click, what Insight does is it gives me a set of calculations which it's expected or would anticipate of the type of calculations that I want to make. So you can see here there's a list, 2012 plus 2013 or 2012 minus 2013. In this particular instance, I want to take 2012 away from 2013, and that should give me a set of results which I can then start to analyze in a bit more detail. So I simply just click on the calculation, Insight will go away and it will start doing that calculation. And then what it does is it creates a further column that we can see here, and it puts the calculation in there so we can see what the compare is. Now I might want to change that so it's a bit more easier for people to understand. So I might say 2012 to 2013 compare or comparison. Click out of that, and that will go ahead and title that up for me. What's also interesting here is at the moment these are looking like just standard numbers, but I want to format that into a proper value. So again, I'm going to select all of those, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to ask it to format all highlighted measures because we're working in a currency. So I'm going to say, I would like that in a currency, please. And then it's going to say, well, which currency would you like? Well, for us, it's going to be UK pounds. So down the list, I can find this. And also I want you to show the currency and the symbol as well. And then I simply click on OK. And then what that will do is it will just simply go ahead and format that. Okay, so I've now got my data. I've formatted it in a way that makes sense, and I've got this comparison down here. So I'm now not interested in 2012, 2013. So again, I highlight and I go and hide. Okay, so now I've got something that looks like the type of information that I'm after. So I can see year on year there are some people that didn't do quite so well, and there are some individuals here that have done much better than they did the previous year. So that's interesting to me. That's as far as I want to go in terms of this particular chart. But there's a couple of things I can do just to make this widget, which is what we call it, look a bit more interesting. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this table because that doesn't really tell me what I want to know. And there's a button up here called Change Display. And I'm just going to simply hit that once, and automatically we can see that it gets rid of that table for me. I'm now going to shrink that because that's a widget that I want to continue to explore. I still want to improve this slightly so I can see exactly what it is I'm looking at. So there's a couple of tips or a couple of things that I like to do. There's a choice of charts that we can go through here. We've got line charts, for example. we've got pie charts and so on and so forth. For this particular chart, I think that a bar chart is a really nice way to display this information, so I'm going to stick with that. But also get a bunch of view options here as well. And again, you can have a play around with this. We can turn the legends on, turn the legends off, etc. But for this particular example, I'm just going to put the lines in, because I think it'll help me understand a bit clearer, or people that are looking at this information, exactly where you are from a numbers perspective. So a few final things that I think help. Removing the overview area also makes this look a bit tidier, in my opinion. And then finally, we're going to turn the listen to all widgets feature off. We'll come back to that later on in the webinar, but for now, I think it's important that we just do that. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and just lock that widget. And that's it. So now I've got some information based on winners and losers that tell me maybe there's some people or some individuals we need to look at. So if I hover over each of these, it'll tell me who the individuals are. I don't necessarily need to know, because I can see from a value perspective. I'll hover there, we can see that Trevor was down 1.1, Trevor Paul. So Trevor looks like he had a pretty tough time of it, 2012 to 2013. So let's try and understand a little bit more about what's going on with Trevor in particular. So my next step is to say, well, how do I look at Trevor? So we go Insert, and then it's just a simple cross tab again with the same data that we used in the first instance. And you'll recognize this. This is the first thing that we saw when we developed our first table. So again, what we now need to start doing is having some more fun with this. Now we know that it's Trevor we want to look at. So again, Trevor's obviously part of the sales team. So we'll drag that in. And I'm also going to have a look at products as well, just to get a sense from Trevor, maybe the type of things that he's selling, where he is from a product perspective, and we're just going to drop that there as well. Now what we can see is all of the different products which Trevor's sold over the period of the last 2.5 years. So what I may want to do also, to be fair to Trevor, is bring in the period as well. So I can go ahead and I can bring in that period, and I can drop that in there. But you'll notice that in the period now, what I've also got is that same calculation that I did previously. So it's remembered what that calculation is. So I'm simply going to click on the 2012 to 2013. And then what it's gone ahead and done is it's gone ahead and essentially worked out over that comparison where the product list is. But you can see there's a lot of data here. So we want to try and drill down rather than per salesman into Trevor. And as you can see, because I've already sorted this, I can just simply go down straight to Trevor Paul, click on Trevor Paul, and immediately it's done that comparison for me. So we can see over that period where Trevor's done so well and where he's not done so well. Now, the data isn't displaying very well at the moment, so I'm going to simply swap that, and then all of a sudden it's going to give me a slightly different compare as well. Now, the other thing I'd like to try and do is try and consolidate this a little bit further, because there's a lot of information in here, and I don't need all of it. There's a lot of zeros. So there's a great little button here called Suppress Empty Cells. It looks like a no entry sign, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is just hit that, and that's going to take all of the zeros out. So that starts to make it a bit easier for me. Now what I can do is, looking at this data, try and understand perhaps where Trevor's not doing so well. So again, if I click on this here, I've got a really neat option to go top or bottom. So why don't we look at what the bottom 10 products are from Trevor's perspective and see what result that gives me. Okay, so it's given me a set of products here that I can see he's not doing so well at, or where he was going backwards on. So this isn't displaying particularly well. I don't like the way that this is charted up, although Insight's gone ahead and selected it. So again, by clicking on the change display type, we can start to cycle through potentially some different chart types and whether they're better suited to this type of data. And you can see here it's going to give me a bunch of options. Now, if we do struggle to get a chart option, what I normally find the best thing to do here is simply flip the data around, and that will give us a different chart type. So I'm going to go ahead and flip the data back around, and then we're going to look at a different way to chart this out for Trevor. So again, I think potentially a scatter bubble might be a better way to look at this from Trevor's perspective. So this isn't charting up exactly the way I'd like it. So what we're going to do is maybe we're going to look at it in a slightly different way. So one of the things that we can do is look at it from a product perspective. And these are the bottom 10 that he's looking at here at the moment. So if I go ahead and take out the compare, let's see what difference that makes. We can simply drag and drop that across there, and that'll take the compare out. So that gives me a better answer. So over the last 2.5 years, we can see these are the products which Trevor has struggled to go ahead and sell over that period. So again, I'm not overly happy with that. So what I'd like to do is maybe look at the different chart types. So I'm going to click down here. I think potentially a pie chart is a better way to display that particular information. So I'm going to go ahead and select pie chart, flip the data back round, and that's a more interesting chart to me. So what I can see is over the last 2.5 years, the different products, or the bottom 10 products that Trevor's not really been able to make stick. So I'm happy with that now. That's a better way to display that. So again, what I want to do is I want to get rid of the table, so I can click on this change display, and that will go ahead and do that. I'm going to reduce that down, and I'm going to plonk this into my workspace here. Now, one of the things that Insight does is it gives me these dotted lines here which help me line up the widgets nicely. So I can just go ahead and place that there. I'm going to shrink that down a little bit so it's more on the screen for you, and then move this up to here. And again, we get the lines to line it up, and we just put that there like that. And again, what I want to do is just simply want to go ahead, and I'm going to turn the listen on widgets option off, and I'm also going to go ahead and take the overview area off, and then finally lock that widget. Okay, so now what I've got is a pie chart that's telling me for Trevor Poole, who we know is up here, here's all the bottom products that he's not been able to do very well at over the last 2.5 years. Okay, so it may be that Trevor's had a tough time of it because of his customer base, or the way that or the patch that he's been working on. So again, what I want to do is I want to go insert, and then I want to bring in the crosstab again, and it's the same data. And as you can see, what will happen is it will bring in exactly the same again from a charting perspective in terms of the first one that we saw. So again, let's have a look at Trevor's customers. So what I want to do again is I'm going to drag and drop the salesman into the rows. It's already selected Trevor, but what this time I'm going to look at is what are the what's his customers. So again, I'm going to pick up the customer dimension. I'm going to drag that in there as well. And what it does is it essentially lists out all of the different customers that Trevor's been working on for the last couple of years. And again, what we can do is we can use the suppress, because that will take out all the zeros for the customers that he's not selling to. And what we've got here then is all the different customers, and we can see, which ones have been going backwards and which ones have been going forwards. Now, incidentally, we've got an other here as well. That's something that could potentially be skewing the information. So what we want to do is go ahead and select other, and we're just going to hide other out as well. So we've got a much better view of where he's at. So here's all the different customers that he's been working on. So the last thing we want to do is just select out what's the best way for us to map that. So I quite like tree maps. So again, we're going to select the different chart type. That's great, that gives me a much better view. And again, what we want to do is just simply get rid of that table. Now, I don't think there's a need to have a legend here, because we've already got the names of the people plus the values. So I simply right click and then hit show legend, and that then disappears. What I'm then able to do is to turn the listen on widgets off, shrink this down, and again, I can go ahead and place this onto my dashboard, so I can get some information based on what I'm looking to do. Again, we can see that the lines appear there. I'm going to extend this out. And the last thing I want to do is simply turn the overview area off and lock down. So now what we've got is an interesting tree map that's telling us the type of customers that he's working on and their value associated to those customers. Now, What I don't want to have to do is have to do this for every single salesperson. So a neat little trick that we can do with Insight is we can go insert, and we've got something here called an explore point, and it automatically brings in all of the different dimensions. So in this particular instance, what I want to do is explore by salesman, and it will create this neat little widget that I can simply just drag into here, and then what I've got is all of my salespeople already listed in here. Now, you may remember, or you may have seen me at some point turn the listen widget icon off. Well, I'm now going to go ahead and turn that on these two widgets here. So I'm going to unlock the widget and then go to our little drop down here, and I'm going to say, I want you to listen. You can see that's now ticked, and then lock the widget. And we're going to do exactly the same here. We're going to unlock the widget, and then we're going to say, listen to all widgets, and then we're going to go ahead and lock it. This is still locked down, this widget here. So now what I can do is I can say, well, okay, I've done that comparison for Trevor based on his customers and based on his products. Who else? So here we've got Gordon Cameron. So what I need to do is I need to sift through my list here, and we can go ahead and find Gordon Cameron. And then what we'll notice is that what Insight will go ahead and do is it'll do that analysis based on my new selection. So there's Gordon there. So I simply click on Gordon, and what you'll notice is that Insight starts to do the same analysis, but what we'll notice is that the pie chart will change and the customers will change as well, because all that information is based on Gordon. And there we go. So Gordon's got a completely different patch, and again we can now start to analyze his customers as well. So all I need to do now is just finally tidy up my dashboard to make sure I'm happy with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and close the cube there. Now there's a really neat option here to unlock, and then I've got something called resize, and that just automatically gives me a square straight away that I can then go ahead and resize this so it fits more nicely to the screen. So I'm going to go ahead, lock this widget, unlock this, and again resize. It gives me a neat square. Again, I can line it up with my other widgets, and I'm just going to lock this back down again. So that's it. So I've built my dashboard. So I'm finished. I've now got everything that I need to go ahead and have my review, to talk to my sales guys and sales ladies and see and just ask them a couple of questions around what we can do to help. It may be that they need some product training, for example. It may be they've lost some particular customers because of poor product knowledge or whatever it may be. But now I've got an insight into what's happening within their patch over the last 2.5 years. So finally, I just want to make this look a little bit more friendly. So if you remember at the very beginning there, I talked around the fact that we've got some different options around workspace. So what I can do now is just go ahead and apply one of those workspaces. And what I can do is simply click on one of these, and it will simply go ahead, resize the widgets. It will also choose a different color palette as well, so that they match a bit more better than I originally selected. I personally like this one, so I'm going to go ahead and select that and then click OK. So the final thing left to do is just to put a title on this, so I know exactly what's what. So again, we can go insert text, and I get a box here, and I'm simply going to call this 2014 year-on-year sales review. Okay, doesn't look very good there, so I'm simply going to go ahead and choose a different color for that particular title. I also want to make it look a little bit bigger as well, and then as this is the same as everything else, a widget, I can then move this around and put it into a place that I feel comfortable with, which is right there in this particular instance. Because it is a widget, I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to go ahead and just lock that, and that's it. And my dashboard's complete. I'm ready to go ahead now and have those discussions. One last final thing, with Insight, we now have the opportunity to go ahead and share this information with other people. So if you are a Cognos user, you can see here that I've got some options to go and share and publish, and also connect to IBM TM1. In this instance, I would just click share. It asks me if I want to save the desktop. Well, I do. So I'm going to call this Sales Year on Year 2014 and save. So what that will then do is it will connect to my Cognos server, and it will publish this information up, which again is one of the powers of Cognos, because as an enterprise tool, what we're able to do is to share information with our peers and colleagues, and if we develop something that is of value or use to them, then clearly they can go ahead and reuse that. So this has gone and chosen essentially my Cognos logon page, which is the Triangle logon page. What I would do is simply go ahead and log on here, and then that would publish that report up. So that's it. That brings me to the conclusion of the demonstration of Cognos Insight. I hope you found it useful. You can find me on LinkedIn as Andrew Shepherd. That's PPARD. Triangle Information Management. If I can help, that's great. Also on this YouTube channel, there's a bunch of other information, particularly around Cognos. We've also got some great things that we can share with you as well around Cognos and around some of the tools that we've developed, and some some assets and some collateral we're happy to share with you. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and looking forward to the next webinar where we'll be exploring in a little bit more detail things around Insight and how we can tie data together. Thanks very much.